So check this out. It's October 6, 2025. Everybody got their eyes on Ukraine and Gaza, right? But why no one was looking? Russia quietly makes a huge military move in West Africa. A move that could flip the whole power balance in the region. And the country they've partnered with, Togo, a small nation. But this isn't just some standard defense deal. This is a game changer. Now, welcome back to Frontline Africa. And today, we are getting into how Russia just got its hands on one of the busiest ports in West Africa, and what that means for Nigeria, which has long been the big dog when it comes to trade in the Gulf of Guinea. So here's what's really going on. Just 3 days before Russia sealed this military deal, Togo signed a customs agreement with the Alliance of Sahel States. That's Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Now, these countries are aligned with Russia. They are sitting on a ton of uranium and gold, but they are landlocked. They have no path to the sea. This deal with Togo gives them a new gateway to the Atlantic, one that doesn't go through the usual trading routes. Now, think about the numbers here. The Port of Lomé in Togo handled over 300 million tons of cargo last year. And get this, Nigeria's own trade stats show their exports to Togo exploded from about 135 billion naira to over 800 billion in just one quarter of this year, 2025. That suddenly makes Togo Nigeria's biggest trading partner in Africa. So while Moscow gets potential access for its navy, the Sahel state gets a way around the old French-controlled trade route. And this is all happening just months after France pulled all its troops out of West Africa. Paris left a power vacuum, and now we are seeing who's stepping in to fill it. The bottom line, Nigeria is now looking at Russian forces, potentially setting up shop right near its borders. Ghana is already on the phone with Donald Trump, beefing up its own defense talks and making deals, including taking US deportees. And ECOWAS, the regional bloc that was supposed to keep everyone together, well, 3 of its members just walked out earlier this year. So in this episode, we are going to connect the dots. We look at how this Togo-Russia pact is shaking up West African geopolitics, how leaders like Ibrahim Traore are tearing up the old colonial playbook, and why the choices of this small coastal nation could knock Nigeria off its pedestal. Let's get into it. October 6, 2025, while the world was distracted, Russia's parliament approved a deal that could completely reroute trade in West Africa. And the nation at the center of it all, Togo, 8 million people, but its strategic value is off the chart. The vote in the State Duma made it official. Russia and Togo are now military partners. This wasn't out of the blue. They signed the framework back in March and April this year. It sets up joint military exercises, training of their troops, and equipment sharing. But here's the kicker. The agreement includes a clause that makes it way easier for Russian warships to visit Togolese ports. And the Port of Lomé is no small-time harbor. We are talking about a serious piece of infrastructure. The World Bank says it handled over 300 million tons of cargo in 2024 alone, making it a major player in the region. They've been upgrading, dredging the channel to make it deeper and expanding the turning basin for bigger ships. When you compare it to other ports in the region, you start to see the picture. The World Bank ranks Nigeria's Lagos port way down at 358 out of 370 globally. Cargo in Nigeria just sits there for almost 14 days on average. That's more than 240% above the global standard. It's no wonder people are looking for other options. President Faure of Togo is playing this very smart. He's been in power for decades, and he's using this moment right as France is packing its bags and ending its 65-year military presence to branch out and find new partners. And Russian officials aren't being shy about their interest here. People like Vladimir Gruzdev, a member of the Russian Government Commission, have been talking up Togo's importance for logistics in the region. Their ambassador, Igor Edvokimov, have been discussing how naval cooperation could give them a stronger strategic foothold. But this military agreement was only half the story. 3 days before that, Togo signed another deal, a customs arrangement that could shift billions in trade and completely rewrite the economic map of the Sahel. We have to look at what went down on October 3rd to really understand what's happening here. Now, let's rewind to January 20th, 2024. That's the day 3 nations, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, announced they were done with ECOWAS. These are countries whose minerals power the world and whose farms feed millions. But they've always been stuck, geographically speaking, landlocked, dependent on their coastal neighbors to get their goods to the market. Well, that's all changing now. When they formed the Alliance of Sahel States, it wasn't just for show. These 3 countries controlled a massive amount of natural resources. According to OECD data, Niger is the world's 7th largest uranium producer. Mali has thousands of tons of uranium reserves, and Burkina Faso is a huge gold producer. But for decades, the profits from all that wealth were funneled through middlemen in the coast. The money wasn't staying home. And a key figure in this shift is Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. He's only 37. He took power back in 2022, making him one of the youngest leaders on the planet. He studied geology, served as a UN peacekeeper, and now he's out there pushing a message of Pan-African unity and breaking free from foreign control. You see the same pattern happening in Niger and Mali. Their revolutionary governments have kicked out the French and are actively looking for new security partners. They are challenging the old deals that govern their resources and linking up with countries like Russia and China. And speaking of Russia, East African Corps has basically taken over where the Wagner group left off. And after Prigozhin's death, this is no longer a private mercenary gig. This is now Moscow's official foreign policy, bringing these Sahel nations directly into its defense orbit. For years, the whole economic system here was built during the colonial era. It was designed to pull resources out of Africa and send them to Europe, not to build trades between African nations. The CFA franc system, for example, forced them to keep their reserves in French banks. The new leaders are saying no more. They are looking for new ways to manage their money and their trade. But even with all their resources, these 3 nations needed one thing Russia couldn't give them: a direct line to the Atlantic Ocean, a way to trade with the world on their own terms. On October 3rd, 2025, they found it, and it's a solution that completely bypasses the old trading routes in West Africa. The Port of Lomé is a serious operation. We are talking a deep channel, a massive turning basin, and it runs 24/7. These are the kinds of specs that get international shipping companies to sit up and take notice. When you put it side by side with Nigeria, the difference is night and day. Nigeria ranks 88th in the world for logistics performance. Togo has been pouring money into modernizing its port, and it shows. Why cargo sits in a Nigerian port for an average of 14 days? In Lomé, they get containers out in about 4 days. The cost difference is just staggering. The World Bank says it costs about $4,800 to move a 40-foot container through a Nigerian port. In Lomé, it's around $1,050. Even if you consider the cost of trucking about 400 kilometers to Lagos, you are still saving up to $1,700 per container. That's a massive discount. And the big shipping lines have noticed. Mediterranean Shipping Company is now sending its huge container ships straight to Lomé, completely avoiding the congestion in Nigeria. The implications go way beyond just commercial shipping. This port can handle all sorts of vessels for maintenance and logistics. Togo's location gives it a natural edge. It has direct road connections to the landlocked countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, and they are still investing, with the African Development Bank backing terminal expansions. That tells you there's long-term confidence in Lomé's growth. Russian officials have been very specific about their maritime goals. Their military deal with Togo covers navigation, hydrography, and maritime security. You don't put these things in a deal with a landlocked country. This makes it clear. Moscow sees Lomé as its potential gateway to the Atlantic, not just another partner on the continent. But having a modern port is one thing. You need customers to make it work. The Alliance of Sahel States had the valuable resources and Togo had the efficient port. Now, they just needed a way to connect the two and cut out the old colonial gatekeepers for good. The answer was found in customs. On the 3rd of October 2025, while everyone was watching the military moves, a custom deal was signed in Lomé that might have done more to break the old colonial economic chains than decades of independence ever did. This wasn't just symbolic, this was a systematic overhaul. The heads of customs from the Alliance of Sahel States met with Togo's top commissioner. Their goal was simple: link their customs systems together. This will let Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso trade directly through Lomé, bypassing all the red tape and bureaucratic roadblocks in other regional ports. Mali's Prime Minister, Abdoulaye Maïga, spelled it out. He thanked Togo for the cooperation, saying that the road to true sovereignty is full of obstacles and requires all of them to work together. Technically, what they are doing is building a digital link between their customs system and Togo's port. It completely cuts out the old oversight that used to control the flow of goods from the Sahel. Before, if you wanted to ship something from Mali to Niger, it had to go through a dozen different approvals before it ever reached the coast. Not anymore. The economic impact here could be huge. Mali's gold, Niger's uranium, Burkina Faso's gold, all of it can now flow through Lomé with streamlined procedures. The money that used to line the pockets of middlemen could now go directly back to the countries that actually produces the resources. They are even drafting a preliminary custom code for their alliance. They are building new institutions from the ground up that could one day make them completely independent of existing regional blocks. This customs revolution could even let these nations trade using different currencies, making them less dependent on the old banking systems. With the alliance already talking about a new currency, this trade corridor could be the thing that finally lets them break away from the colonial financial structure. So the deal was done. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso could now trade their resources on their own terms. But Nigeria had been the king of West African trade for decades. And you can bet Lagos wasn't just going to sit back and watch its market share disappear. The big question was, could Nigeria even compete? For Nigeria, this is a strategic nightmare. You've got your neighbors teaming up with a global power, opening up new trade routes, and setting up camp all along your borders. This isn't some distant diplomatic game. This is direct competition right on Nigeria's doorstep. If you look at the map, you can see a potential Russian military presence stretching across Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and now Togo. That creates a presence along Nigeria's northern and western borders. Nigeria's foreign minister, Yusuf Togo, has said publicly he's worried about Russia's role in the region, warning it could make things even more unstable. And the economic numbers back up his concern. Nigeria's logistics performance is falling behind its neighbors, and other ports are stealing its business. Studies suggest Nigeria could lose a massive amount of revenue from custom duties because of all this diverted cargo. We are talking about hundreds of billions of naira a year potentially vanishing. The Port of Lagos is just at a disadvantage. They are ranked near the bottom of the World Bank's index. It takes a ship 18 to 20 days to get in and out, while other ports are doing it much faster. On top of that, you have multiple taxes, crazy congestion, and bad infrastructure. It's pushing shipping companies away. The trade stats tell the story loud and clear. Nigeria's own official data shows export to Togo shot up six-fold in 1 quarter. Togo is now Nigeria's top African trading partner. But it's not because Togolese people are suddenly buying 6 times more Nigerian stuff. It means cargo is being rerouted through Lomé because it's cheaper and faster. On top of the economic worries, you've got the security threat. The idea of a Russian military presence operating just 200 kilometers from Lagos is a huge intelligence and diplomatic headache for Nigeria. The old ECOWAS system of cooperation has crumbled, leaving Nigeria more isolated from its northern neighbors who are now talking to Moscow instead of Abuja. Nigeria's options seem pretty limited. Fixing the infrastructure mess will take years, and their competitors aren't waiting around. A military confrontation is out of the question. It will destabilize the whole region, and Nigeria has enough of its own internal security problems to deal with. What's happening to Nigeria is sending shockwaves across West Africa. If the continent's most populous nation can be outmaneuvered like this by smaller neighbors with foreign backing, what does that mean for everyone else? Down in Ghana, they've been watching very, very closely and are already making their own moves. So in July of 2025, just weeks after the details of the Russian-Togo deal came out, the top US diplomat in Togo, Richard Michaels, made a very public visit to the Port of Lomé. He was there to promote American investment. The timing was no accident. It shows that Washington is awake to what's happening and is trying to maintain its own influence. American officials were praising Lomé, calling it a gateway to African market with top-notch infrastructure. The visit was a clear signal that the US isn't going to just cede the ground as other powers move in. Ghana is also playing its cards carefully. It's tightening its defense relationship with the US and positioning itself as a stable, reliable partner in a region that is suddenly looking very unpredictable. As its neighbors pivot to new allies, Ghana's value to the West goes up and they could mean more investment and cooperation. Meanwhile, ECOWAS is in trouble. The whole model of regional integration is being challenged. A recent survey showed that 54% in Togo would actually support leaving ECOWAS to join the Russian-allied Alliance of Sahel States. Think about that. There is popular support for turning away from the old Western allied bloc. And of course, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso already made it official. They worked out on January 20th. That's officially. The Alliance of Sahel States is becoming much more than just a military pact. They've signed treaties to deepen their political and economic ties, trying to become less dependent on ECOWAS for everything. They are even planning a joint military force. This is a real alternative power structure in the making. You can see the shift in trade patterns. The old ECOWAS route, which mostly benefited the coastal nations, are now competing with this new arrangement that puts the Sahel state in a much stronger position. The new customs deal is designed to pull commerce away from the old port and straight into Lomé. This also creates a huge problem for intelligence sharing. The Russian-Togo deal has clauses about security intelligence. That raises a lot of questions. Who is sharing what with whom? It could mess up the cooperation that used to exist between ECOWAS partners. Even the plan for a single regional currency, the ECO, is hitting roadblocks after roadblocks. How can you have a unified currency when the region is splitting into different economic and political camps? The Sahel nations are already exploring their own monetary options, which could speed up their exit from the old systems. So the scramble is on. Regional powers are choosing sides, and global powers are offering competing deals. And it all boils down to a couple of fundamental questions. In this new multipolar world, can African nations actually stay sovereign while juggling relationship with so many different powers? Or are they just swapping one form of dependency for another? The answers to these questions will probably define the future of this region for a very long time to come. About a year ago, ECOWAS looked solid. Nigeria seemed like the undisputed regional power, and French influence felt like a permanent fixture. Today, Russian vessels have access to a key West African port. Landlocked Sahel nations have their own route to the sea, and the old colonial economic order is facing a real challenge. This is the new multipolar Africa. The map of power in West Africa has been completely redrawn. Leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré and his allies have done something that independence movement have been talking about for decades. They've created an alternative economic path free from the old colonial structures. The Alliance of Sahel States now controls its vast mineral wealth and has access to the Atlantic, not as dependents but as partners. The economic fallout will be massive because this new customs framework could shift billions of dollars in trade, making Lomé the main hub for the Sahel. It cuts out the traditional port and financial systems. The wealth from their resources can now flow through channels that benefit them, not the old intermediaries. For Russia, this is a major victory. It's not just a military deal. They have fundamentally repositioned themselves in African geopolitics. Having naval access combined with partnerships with resource-rich nations gives them incredible influence, enough to challenge the West's long-standing presence on the continent. The African Gulf provide the muscle, while Russian companies lock in the strategic deals. For Nigeria, this is a wake-up call. They have to find a delicate balance now. They need to modernize their own economy and ports, and they have to do it fast. But they also have to manage the new security situation diplomatically, avoiding a confrontation with neighbors who are now playing with a different team. The challenge is figuring out how to remain Africa's biggest economy when the rules of the game have completely changed. What this means for the rest of Africa is that regional blocs might start to look very different. The old model, like ECOWAS, which was often aligned with the West, is now competing with new alliances built on different principles. Alliances that put national sovereignty first. And when you talk to people on the ground, the feelings are complex. A lot of Africans are thrilled to see the old colonial ties being broken, but there are still questions about what comes next. Do these new partnerships actually give African nations more control, or do they just create a new set of dependencies? The real test is whether this new relationship will strengthen African sovereignty or just swap one form of foreign power for another. The future could go a couple of ways. It could be an era of managed competition, or it could be the start of a new kind of integration led by Africans on their own terms. The best case scenario is that African states learn to balance their relationship with all the global powers while building a unified continent that answers to no one but themselves. In the end, this Togo-Russia deal is about more than just two countries. It's a symbol of Africa's drive to set its own course in a world that is no longer dominated by one or two powers. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré are showing that even smaller nations can shake up the established order when they unite around the principles of sovereignty and economic freedom. Whether this leads to real autonomy or just a new set of chains is a story that is still being written. But one thing is for sure, the old colonial map of Africa is being torn up, and this time, Africans are holding the pen. Now, if you have watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa, where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view, where we bring you the stories that mainstream media won't dare to bring you the kind of details we bring here in this channel. And if you want to see more of my videos, maybe consider to subscribe and turn up those notifications. Or better still, visit our news website, frontlineafrica.tv, where we bring you the kind of stories just like we do in this channel with more details, and it covers a whole lot of areas. Here in this channel, we post an average of 5 times per week, and we are limited to a lot of topics that we would have loved to cover. But our website does justice to it. We don't just bring you the news, we strip away all the propaganda, and we give you exactly what is happening on African soil. On the ground report, like word on the street. We don't focus on official reporting. We don't focus on press releases from government houses. We focus on word on the street, and that is what makes Frontline Africa special. So I am your host, Ezekiel Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.